Hello everyone, welcome back. And in this video, we are going to learn about the physiological anatomy and functions of thalamus. So let us begin. We will cover this topic under the following headings. First, we'll go through the physiological anatomy. We'll deal with the anatomical portion, physiological concerns of the anatomy of thalamus. Then we will deal with the connections of the thalamus, that is, from where the signals or from where the inputs are coming and to where the outputs are going from the thalamus. Then, based on the anatomy and the connections of the thalamus, we look at what functions the thalamus perform. And at last, we are going to study about the applied aspect. One of it is the thalamic syndrome. So let us begin with the physiological anatomy of the thalamus. This is a mid-sagittal view of the brain. The section is a mid-sagittal section, and here you can see this ovoid structure, the oval structure. This is the thalamus. As we can see in this diagram, the thalamus is present here. Along with that, pineal gland, hypothalamus and pituitary gland. These all structures together forms the diencephalon. And this diencephalon along with the cerebral cortex makes the forebrain. So the thalamus, the pineal gland, hypothalamus and pituitary gland are the diencephalon, and this here is the thalamus. To study the anatomy of thalamus, we are going to study it in the horizontal section. So let us have a look what is the horizontal section of the brain. When we look at the brain from below upwards, it looks like this. And if we do a section horizontally, if we do the section horizontally, this would be the outcome, and this is how the horizontal section will look like. In this horizontal section, this is the third ventricle, and just lateral to the third ventricle resides the thalamus. So this oval structure what you can see here is the thalamus in the horizontal section of the brain. For our purpose, we are going to study the anatomy of the thalamus with the help of this diagram. So this diagram is just the representation of the horizontal section of the thalamus. So when we are going to study about the anatomy of the thalamus, in the physiological aspect, physiological anatomy of thalamus, we are going to study the internal structure of the thalamus. The internal structure of the thalamus is divided into gray matter and white matter. Majorly, it is made up of gray matter. The internal structure of the thalamus consists mostly of gray matter and very small amount of white matter. So when we see gray matter, we will study there are masses of nuclei inside the thalamus. So there are different nucleus inside the gray matter, or there are different nucleus which forms the gray matter of the thalamus. These nucleus are divided into anterior parts, lateral part and medial part, as we will understand in the diagram. So the masses of nuclei are divided into anterior, lateral and medial parts. And these nuclei can be classified anatomically and can be classified functionally. So we will look at the anatomical classification of the nucleus, and we will look at the functional classification of the nucleus of thalamus. Then we'll come at the white matter. So white matter is the axonal part. The axonal part of the neuron makes up the white matter. The cell body part of the neuron makes up the gray matter. So when we consider the white matter, there will be three structures. That is stratum zonale, that is a thin layer of white matter which covers the thalamus. Then comes the external medullary lamina and internal medullary lamina. So these are the white matters: stratum zonale, external medullary lamina, and internal medullary lamina. We will study the white matter first because they are less in number, and then we will move on to study the gray matter because we have to extensively classify them. So as you can see here in this diagram, this structure here, which is present outside of the main structure of the thalamus, or as to say externally, is the external medullary lamina. So this is, as we have said, it is the white matter. It is the connection between few nucleus. So what is the connection? It is the thalamocortical and corticothalamic axons. That means the external medullary lamina consists of the axons which are going from thalamus to the cerebral cortex and coming from the cerebral cortex to the thalamus. So this is one of the white matter of the thalamus. Now the second white matter of the thalamus is our internal medullary lamina. As you can see here, the internal medullary lamina, it is a Y-shaped structure. It is a Y-shaped structure which divides various nucleus of the thalamus. So we will study about how anatomically this internal medullary lamina is dividing the nucleus in various parts, but let us concentrate first in the internal medullary lamina. So this lamina is a Y-shaped structure and it is present internally to the thalamus, internal in the nucleus, around the nucleus of the thalamus, that is why internally or internal, and this is the another white matter. So this is also connecting some nucleus, and as we have studied that external medullary lamina was connecting the thalamus to the cortex, these internal medullary lamina are the axons which are connecting the nuclei of the thalamus itself. So various nuclei are connected to each other with the help of internal medullary lamina. Now coming to the gray matter of the thalamus. So the gray matter of the thalamus is made up of various nuclei, and these nuclei are divided into various parts. As we have studied, there are three parts: the anterior part, the medial part, and the lateral part. So this is where the third ventricle resides, in the midline, and this would be the medial part and this would be the lateral aspect of the thalamus. So this Y-shaped internal medullary lamina divides various nuclei into these three parts. As you can see here, this Y bifurcation is dividing the nucleus. This would be the anterior part of the nucleus, anterior part of the thalamus. This side would be the medial part of the thalamus. So this aspect is the medial part of the thalamus, and this aspect here is the lateral part of the thalamus. And these various nuclei are now being classified into the anatomical classification and into the functional classification. So first of all, we'll go through the anatomical classification and then we are going to go through the functional classification. Okay, so to begin with the anatomical classification of thalamus, there are three groups of nuclei. As we have studied the three parts: anterior part, the medial part, and the lateral part of the thalamus, divided by the internal medullary lamina. When we consider the anatomical classification of thalamus, the nucleus of the thalamus, we consider these parts. So according to that, the thalamus is divided into anterior group of nuclei, the lateral group of nuclei, and the medial group of nuclei. Let us have a look at the first anterior group of nuclei. So in the anterior group of nuclei there is only one nucleus, that is anterior nucleus. As you can see here, this structure here is the anterior nucleus of the thalamus. Now coming to the lateral group of nuclei. When we study about the lateral group of nuclei, this lateral aspect of the thalamus, it is further divided into two parts. The lateral group of nuclei is further divided into two subparts, that is the ventral group and the dorsal group. Ventral, as we can see, anterior, or dorsal, as we can say, posterior. So when we see the horizontal section of the thalamus, this part is the anterior part and this part is the posterior part. So there would be, in the lateral group, there would be two groups, that is the ventral group or anterior group and dorsal group or the posterior group. So when we look at the ventral group, the ventral subdivision of the lateral group of nuclei, there are few nuclei. These are the ventral anterior nuclei, the ventral lateral or otherwise called as lateroventral nuclei, the ventral posterior or otherwise called as posteroventral nuclei, which is further subdivided into ventroposteromedial and ventroposterolateral nuclei. Then comes the medial geniculate body and the lateral geniculate body. So as we can see here, this portion is a ventral anterior, this is ventral lateral, this is ventroposteromedial, this is ventroposterolateral, this here is the medial geniculate body and this here is the lateral geniculate body. When we look at the dorsal subdivision of the lateral group of nuclei, there is three nucleus, that is lateral dorsal nucleus, lateral posterior nucleus and the pulvinar. So as you can see here, this structure is the lateral dorsal nucleus, this structure is the lateral posterior nucleus and this structure here is the pulvinar. So the lateral group of nuclei divided into ventral groups and dorsal group. These structures here are the dorsal group of nuclei and these structures here are the ventral group of nuclei, which consist of various different nucleuses. Now coming to the third aspect of the thalamus, that is the medial group, which would be located on the medial side of the thalamus. So medial nucleus is made up of three nucleuses, that is the dorsomedial nucleus, the centromedial nucleus and the midline nucleus. So let us have a look. This is the dorsomedial nucleus, this is the centromedial nucleus and this here is the midline nucleus. So the third part is the medial group, which is located medially in the thalamus, which consists of dorsomedial nucleus, centromedial nucleus and the midline nucleus. Now when we look at the functional classification of these nucleus of the thalamus, there are two distinct classification. That is, the first is non-specific projection nuclei and the second is specific projection nuclei. What do you understand by non-specific projection nuclei? The term non-specific means it is not projecting to a specific area, whereas it is projecting to a broad area, to a wide region in the brain. So the non-specific nuclei are the one which sends their signals to a broad area of the cerebral cortex, which are receiving the signals from the reticular activating system and other areas of the brain and sending their signal to a broad area, that is the whole of the cerebral cortex. That makes up the non-specific specific projection nuclei. Under this comes the midline nuclei and the centromedian nucleus. So the midline nuclei and the centromedian nucleus will receive signal from different area of the brain and will send the signal to a broad area of the cerebral cortex. Whereas when we consider the second part, that is the specific projection nuclei, this specific projection nuclei will send the signal to the specific area of the brain. In this, there are further subdivisions, that is specific sensory relay nuclei. That means these nucleus specifically sends their signal to the sensory part of the brain. Then comes the motor control nuclei. That means these nucleus are responsible for integrating the motor function of the brain, the motor areas, which connects the cerebellum, the basal ganglia to the motor aspect, the motor cortex of the brain. Then comes the visceral efferent control, and these are the areas which are the one which controls the visceral efferent or the visceral functions, and integrative and perceptual functions control nuclei. That means these receive signal from various aspects of the brain and integrate, and perceptual functions are performed by these nuclei. So let us see which all nuclei are included in non-specific and specific projection nuclei. We will further study about the nucleus which are involved in the specific sensory relay nuclei, the motor function, the visceral efferent control, and the integrative and perceptual function. So let us start first with the non-specific projection nuclei. So under the non-specific projection nuclei, we already mentioned that there are two different nuclei, that is midline nuclei and the centromedian nucleus. So these are the non-specific projection nuclei. That means they are receiving input from various parts of the brain and sending their output to a non-specific wide area of the cerebral cortex. Based on that, the non-specific area performs a particular function, that is maintaining the orientation and awareness or the activeness of the brain. Now coming to the specific projection nuclei. That means the specific projection nuclei are the one which receive signal from different parts of the body, different parts of the brain, and then they send their output to a specific area or specific region in the brain. Under that, the first is specific sensory relay nuclei. So as we can see in this diagram, this is the functional grouping of the nucleus. We have already studied the anatomical grouping, that is anterior, medial and lateral grouping, and in lateral there were ventral and the dorsal group, whereas this is the functional grouping. As you can see that the specific relay nuclei are, the specific sensory relay nuclei are the medial geniculate body. This medial geniculate body receives signal from the auditory, from the cochlea, and from this it sends the signal to the auditory cortex, the area number 41 and 42. Then comes the lateral geniculate body. As you can see here, the lateral geniculate body, it receives signal from the retina, the visual signals from the retina, and it sends the signal to the visual cortex, area number 17, 18, 19. Then comes the posterior ventral group of nuclei. The posterior ventral group of nuclei are made up of ventero-posterior medial and ventero-posterior lateral nuclei, and these receives the signal from the medial lemniscus pathway. That means the one which is carrying the fine touch, the vibration, proprioception, sensation, and from the same sensation from the trigeminal nerve, and these sends their signal to the somatosensory cortex. Now coming to the second specific projection nuclei, that is a specific motor control nuclei. Under this comes the ventrolateral nucleus and ventral anterior nucleus. So this one here is the ventrolateral or the ventral lateral nucleus, and this is the ventral anterior nucleus. These are the specific motor control nucleus. As we would see further in the connections, they receives the signal from the basal ganglia and the cerebellum and then sends it to the motor cortex for the initiation and the coordination of movement. So that is why these are specific motor control nuclei. Then coming to the third aspect, that is the visceral motor control nuclei. So these nuclei are the one which are involved in the control of emotion, in the control of thinking and planning. So the visceral motor control nuclei includes the anterior nucleus here, as you can see, anterior nucleus, and the dorsomedial nucleus in the medial aspect of the thalamus. The anterior nucleus here is a part of Pepys circuit which is responsible for the emotional response, and the dorsomedial nucleus is involved in the thinking and perception or programming aspect of the intellect. Now coming to the integrative and perceptual functional control nuclei. So the integrative function is performed by these three nucleus in the thalamus, that is the pulvinar nucleus, the lateral posterior nucleus, and the dorsal lateral nucleus, that is the pulvinar, the lateral posterior nucleus, and the dorsal lateral nucleus. These receive signals, input signal from superior colliculus, from the auditory and the visual cortex, and their function is to integrate these input, and they send their output to various region of the brain, that is the temporal, the occipital, and the somatosensory cortex. So now comes to the second part of our lecture, that is connection of the thalamus. We'll start studying the connection of the thalamus by studying first the non-specific nuclei, but these are not shown here in the diagram. The non-specific nuclei are receiving the input from the reticular activating system and other thalamic nuclei, and then they send their output to the various aspects, various parts, diffused output to the various parts of the cerebral cortex. Here in this diagram there is shown different nuclei and their afferent and efferent pathways. That means afferent means they are receiving signal from which part of the body, which part of the brain, and then efferent, that means that nucleus is sending signal to which part of the brain. So we'll study this afferent efferent connections of the thalamus one by one on the basis of functional classification of the nuclei. So among the functional classification, first we already dealt with the non-specific nuclei. Now let us start with the specific nuclei. And which one was the first specific nuclei? That is the specific nuclei for sensory input. So under that, first is our medial geniculate body. So the medial geniculate body receives input from lateral lemniscus. That means it receives the input from the auditory, sensory, from the cochlea. Auditory sensation, it is receiving from the lateral lemniscus through the auditory nerve and the cochlear nerve, and it is coming to the medial geniculate body. There is a topographical representation of the frequencies of sound in the medial geniculate body, and these nerves are arranged in a topographical way in the medial geniculate body. So this is responsible for relaying the auditory sensation. Where does it sense? This was the afferent, and then let's see its efferent. So it sends when this synapse here, the cell body with the cell body, it sends to the its signal. The next neuron arises from the medial geniculate body, and it then goes and sends its signal to the auditory cortex, which is area number 41 and 42. So this medial geniculate body is responsible for auditory sensation. It is the relay center for auditory sensation. Coming to the second sensory functional division or functional sensory relay center is the lateral geniculate body. This lateral geniculate body receives the input from the optic tract, and here again there is a topographical arrangement from various areas of the retina. So this lateral geniculate body is responsible for relaying the visual sensation, and once it receives the neurons, it synapses to the cell bodies, and these cell body give rise to axons, which goes to the visual cortex, area number 17, 18 and 19. So the afferent is optic tract in the lateral geniculate body, and efferent is going to the visual cortex, area number 17, 18, 19. So it is relaying the visual sensation. Now the other sensory nucleus are the ventero-posterolateral nucleus and ventero-posteromedial nucleus. As we have already studied in the functional classification, the third is the sensory. The third among the sensory nucleus are ventero-posteromedial and ventero-posterolateral nucleus. These are receiving the sensation from the spinothalamic tract, medial lemniscus, that is dorsal column medial lemniscus pathway, and trigeminal lemnisci. That means from the spinothalamic tract they are receiving the crude touch, the pain and temperature sensation. From medial and trigeminal lemnisci they are receiving the sensation from the body in the medial lemniscus and from the face in the trigeminal lemniscus. They are receiving the sensation of fine touch, vibration, proprioception and other sensations which are carried by those tracts. Now once the neurons comes here, they synapse to the cell body, which give rise to the axons, which goes to the somatosensory cortex, that is area number 3, 1, 2 and 4. So this is the relay center. The ventero-posteromedial and ventero-posterolateral nuclei are the relay center for the sensory sensation like the pain, temperature, crude touch, fine touch and the proprioception sensations. Now coming to the second aspect, that is the second functional division is the motor aspect, the motor function in the thalamic nuclei, that consists of ventero-anterior nucleus and ventral lateral or ventrolateral nucleus. So the motor nuclei are these two nuclei, that is the ventral anterior nucleus and the ventral lateral nucleus. As you can see here, both of them are receiving signals from two important other brain regions which are responsible for motor function, that is cerebellum and the basal ganglia. These two are the part of basal ganglia. So the ventrolateral nucleus is receiving signal from the cerebellum, that is dendrothalamic fibers, that is the neurons arising from the dentate nucleus of the cerebellum coming to the thalamus, and the signal is also coming from globus pallidus. Ventral anterior nucleus is receiving signal from the basal ganglia exclusively, which are coming from globus pallidus and substantia nigra. These neurons then synapse on the cell body which are present on the ventroanterior and the ventrolateral lateral nucleus and sends them to the motor cortex and the premotor area. So these are the one which are responsible for motor functions. Then coming to the third aspect, that was visceral function. Visceral function means their contribution in emotion, their contribution in thinking, and their contribution in planning. So as you can see, there are two nucleus in the visceral function, that is the anterior nucleus and the dorsal medial nucleus. The anterior nucleus is receiving signal from the mammillary body, as we have already told that it is also a part of Pepys circuit. So it is receiving the signal from mammillary body and giving the signal back to the cingulate cortex, which are the structures of Pepys circuit. Then comes the dorsal medial nucleus, which receives signal from the prefrontal cortex and the hypothalamic nuclei, and then sends them back to the same region, that is the hypothalamic nuclei, and back to the prefrontal cortex, and thus helps in planning and thinking process in the brain. Now coming to the fourth and the final, that is integrative function, which is including the lateral dorsal nucleus, the pulvinar. Here only one representation is given. The integrative function is represented only by pulvinar, but there are three nucleus which are involved. All of them have the same input and same output. So let us study the integrative function just by studying the pulvinar. So the pulvinar is receiving signals from the superior and inferior colliculus, and it also receives signals from the auditory and the visual areas, and their output goes to the parietal, occipital and superior temporal cortex, and thus it helps in integrating various type of sensation, that is the auditory, the visual and the other sensation. It integrates and send it to the various areas in the cerebral cortex. So these are the connections of thalamus, and based on these connections you can easily see the functions of the thalamus. So our next topic is the function of thalamus. That includes the thalamic function as sensory relay center. So as we have already seen that it relays the sensation from various areas of the body, various sensation like auditory sensation, visual sensation and the sensation of pain, touch and other sensation. It relays from various area to the cerebral cortex. Then it also acts as an integration, as we have seen in case of pulvinar, lateral dorsal nucleus, that it integrates the sensory information. Then comes the crude center for perception of sensation. That means the thalamus itself can have the sensation, certain sensation can be felt if the cerebral cortex is not there. Only if the thalamus is there, still certain sensation like pain sensation can be felt. So the thalamus itself is a crude center for perception. Usually the perception part of the sensation is performed, the function of perception is performed by the somatosensory cortex, but a crude center thalamus can also be used as a crude center for perception of sensation. Then comes center for integration of motor function. As we have seen, the ventral anterior and the ventral lateral nucleus, which receives impulses from the cerebellum, the basal ganglia, and integrates the motor function. The role in arousal and alertness, that is the non-specific nuclei what we discussed, that is the centromedial nucleus and the midline nucleus, acts as a non-specific nuclei and has their role in maintaining the arousal and alertness in our body, in our brain. Then emotional aspects, as we have seen the visceral functions, the anterior nuclei, which was the part of Pepys circuit, is responsible for emotional aspect of our behavior. The role in synchronization of electroencephalogram is also played by the non-specific nuclei of the thalamus. Then it is also a center for integration of visceral and somatic function, because hypothalamus is the one which is responsible for visceral and somatic function, the visceral function, the somatic function is performed by the cerebral cortex itself, the visceral function is performed by hypothalamus, and all of the signals are going through thalamus only. That is how thalamus is the one where the integration of both the visceral and somatic function is taking place. And it is also acting as a center for reflex activity, because the sensory reflex activity, the sensation passes through the thalamus, it also acts as a center for reflex activity. So this is how the thalamus performs its various functions. By the virtue of its connections, it is performing these all functions. The last aspect of this would be thalamic syndrome. Now, the thalamic syndrome is caused by the loss of blood supply to an important aspect of the thalamus. It is caused by the blockage of thalamo-geniculate artery. As you can see here, thalamo-geniculate artery, which is supplying the ventero-posterolateral and ventero-posteromedial nucleus. If you would remember that these are the areas, these are the nucleus which are responsible for the sensation, for the various sensation, that is pain, fine touch and other sensation. That is why the symptoms of thalamic syndrome will majorly include the sensory symptoms, and if the damage is to the motor area, it will also include the motor symptoms. So the sensory symptoms include stereognosis, that is inability to identify the object with closed eye. When you give some object in a person's hand, he can touch, he can feel the texture and identify what is that object. That is called as stereognosis. If there is damage to this region due to the blockage of thalamo-geniculate artery, the symptom which appears first is stereognosis. That means when you give this object in the patient's hand, he will not be able to identify the object. The other sensory symptoms includes thalamic phantom limb. That means the patient with his closed eye will not be able to localize the arm, localize the limb, or localize the position of the limb. That is again because of the destruction of these sensory relay centers. The sensation is not reaching to the cortex, and that is why the proprioception sensation is interrupted, and because of that the patient is unable to localize the position of the limb. The thalamic overreaction, the third symptom is thalamic overreaction. That means that there is hypersensitivity of that limb for the pain sensation. That means the threshold of the pain is reduced, and even the touch sensation can be enough to evoke the pain sensation. So that is the thalamic overreaction. Now coming to the motor symptoms. When you look at the motor symptoms, ataxia and decrease in the muscle tone is one of the major symptoms. There might be involuntary movements like chorea or the intentional tremors, and there might be thalamic hand or athetoid hand. What does that mean? It is a specific posture of hand which includes mild flexion at the wrist and hyperextension at the fingers. So that could be the motor symptoms of the thalamic syndrome. So this is one of the applied aspect of the thalamus, injury to the thalamus because of blockage to the thalamo-geniculate artery. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it is helpful for you to understand the thalamus.